Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're really excited to see this many people joining today to talk about test automation. So let's get started. I'm Tony Salvadoceva, Product Marketing Manager at Xray, and today I'm joined by Cristiano Cunha, our Solution Architect and a specialist in test automation. We chose the topic of test automation for today because it's a road that many companies follow on their testing journeys, either because they want to improve testing quality, speed up delivery of releases, or to save time and resources. However, getting started and maintaining test automation can be a challenge. A lot of people struggle on where to start, what kind of tests can be automated, how to interpret these results. Others can have difficulty progressing into other automation processes. In this webinar, we'll try to clear some doubts around these kinds of topics and show you a few real-world examples of what automated testing can look like. Feel free to ask any questions during the presentation in the Q&A panel, and we'll try to address them at the end of the session. Let's see what we have on the agenda for today. First, we're going to give you a quick refresher on what are the different types of automation and what types of tests can be automated. Then we're going to share some of the most common characteristics that tests should have in order to be automated. We're also going to talk about how you should include test automation in your testing strategy and the main challenges that come with test automation. After this more theoretical part, we're going to dive into real use cases and show you test automation examples using different tools such as Playwright and Locust. And we're going to show you how to integrate test automation with your DevOps stack. Finally, we're going to show you how you can report on your results using Xray. To end the session, you'll have the opportunity to have some of your questions answered, so stay tuned until the end. So let's jump right into the presentation, and I'll pass the word over to Cristiano.
Thank you, Tony. But before jumping into the demonstration itself, let's review some concepts and some advices for you to handle better the automation that you want to embrace. Let's begin by understanding the types of automation testing. Broadly, they are divided into non-functional and functional tests. Non-functional tests focus on the behavior, performance, and reliability of the system. They ensure the system operates smoothly under real-world conditions. Functional testing, on the other hand, it's all about verifying that the system does what it's supposed to do, based on the requirements and business scenarios. This includes tests like acceptance testing, system testing, integration testing, smoke testing, or unit testing. The next question is, which are the tests that I should automate? And when we address that, one of the biggest mistakes I see out there is converting blindly the manual tests into automated ones. This usually will lead us to have complicated tests, hard to maintain, and with flaky behavior. How can we answer the question, which tests should we automate? Repeatable tests should be automated to save time and ensure consistency in every cycle. Repetitive tests should also be automated because they involve frequent validations. They will benefit from automation by eliminating the human error. Next, we want also to prioritize business critical tests. This will ensure that key functionalities that directly impact the business are reliable. And of course, the determinant tests, where the outcomes are clear and unambiguous, that make them actually perfect for automation. But all of this must be also aligned with the principles of the testing pyramid. And I'm sure that everyone is familiarized with it. But just a brief overview is try to invest most on the tests that are at the base of the pyramid, because as we can see, as we climb the pyramid, the tests will be more costly to create, more difficult to maintain. The execution time will be greater as you climb the pyramid. The tests will be more brittle, even though the coverage will increase. And in terms of number, you should have the outmost number for the tests that are at the base of the pyramid and have less and less tests as you climb the pyramid. And by focusing our efforts strategically, we ensure efficient and scalable test automation. But testing and test automation is not an afterthought. It's something that we must invest continuously. And with the appearing of DevOps, platform engineering, and other trends, we start to live in a continuous world where quality is inserted into all the stages of the delivery pipeline. As we can see, testing is not just a phase, but an ongoing process, integrated throughout the development lifecycle. Here, we reference two key models that follow the same approach. The holistic testing from Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin that emphasizes testing as a team effort that spans every phase, ensuring continuous feedback and quality. Similarly, on the Dan Ashby's continuous testing in DevOps, it shows that testing integrates seamlessly into every step of the DevOps pipeline. While test automation offers immense value, it comes with challenges we must address. For example, siloed teams and results can hinder collaboration, and tracking automation evolution often becomes difficult. We also face multiple sources of truth because data is scattered across platforms and can create inconsistencies. Xray actually serves as a central quality hub, enabling you to centralize test management by consolidating automation results, manual testing, and exploratory sessions into one unifying platform. This ensures seamless tracking of requirement coverage and provides teams with a single source of truth. Actually, having everything under the same roof, under your Jira project, is really valuable in terms of collaboration. So once you bring visibility of the quality of your project in the same place where you work on the daily basis on your project, it will foster collaboration between your team. And Xray is also made in a way that it's easy to integrate with automation, and it allows you to ingest those results so that you can have an overview about not only the manual tests and exploratory tests, but also all of the automation that you execute out there. So the vision that you have, the visibility over quality, is the full vision of quality. And of course, it allows you to link those tests to requirements. That is often what's missing with automation. And to cover all that up, we also have powerful reports that offer deep insights, enabling teams to make data-driven decisions with confidence. And with Xray, managing quality becomes effortless, driving smarter strategies and better project outcomes. And I will show you a bit of everything that I just said, how you can integrate automation results into Xray, how that will look like in Jira, and how powerful reports will mean a world apart once you have all that data centralized. But how can a test management tool drive investment in automation while maintaining focus on manual and exploratory testing and ensuring requirement coverage? Good question. Let me see if I can answer you. So Xray achieves this by providing specific integration with tools like Jenkins, where we have a specific plugin, or GitHub Actions, where we actually contributed to an action in order to encapsulate the API requests, or Playwright Reporter, where we also contributed to a Playwright Reporter that creates or adds extra information on the reports, as well as the ability to ingest results from various automation tools via its API. So basically for Xray, it doesn't matter the tool that you are using to automate your test, as long as you generate compatible test results. Because once you do that, you can seamlessly import them into Xray. In the image, you can see a multitude of test results. We support JUnit, TestNG, NUnit, XUnit, Trouble Framework, Cucumber, and Behave.json. And we have our custom result type, that is Xray.json reports, that has been defined in a way for you. If you have a custom framework and you are producing your own custom reports, it may worthwhile to invest into creating an Xray JSON report, because it will allow you to add extra information when you are ingesting those automation results back. So with a single API call, automation results will be centralized alongside manual and exploratory efforts, giving the team a unified view of testing activities within the same platform where the project features are developed. This flexible strategy ensures that Xray supports new automation tools and frameworks as long as they produce standardized outputs like JUnit results, which are actually widely adopted across the industry. So next, let's see how all of this looks like with an example of a playwright tests. Before actually jumping into the demo, let's take a closer look at how Playwright can be used for UI testing while seamlessly integrating with Xray to enhance traceability and reporting. In this example, we'll see how we will test a web application with two tests, one that will log in with valid credentials and one with invalid credentials. But let me just highlight that we at Xray have contributed to a reporter into Playwright that allows you to add some more rich information in the reports. Namely, you can add test keys where this will, when you ingest the automation test, will link the automation, the execution of the automation to a test in Xray. So you can define a test key on the test info annotations. You can redefine the summary of that test. You can also rewrite or define a description that is most suited for that test. You can also link that test to a requirement or even add attachments like files in base 64. This will allow you to increase the information that you can pass into Xray. Let's jump to the demo of a Playwright test. Before jumping to the Playwright test, let me just show you the Jira instance where I have Xray activated and where I'm going to push the Playwright tests. And here we have the requirement, so a user story, XT41, that is actually already being covered by 4 tests. And when you have Xray activated, what you will see is this new section, the test coverage section, that will show you all of the tests that are covering your requirement. And you also see the overall status result calculated over all of the executions of the tests that you have linked to this user story. This means that now the user story or requirement is not okay, meaning that we have at least one test that is failing, that is this successful login. Regarding the code, what we have is this test, login.spec.js, that will have 2 tests defined, a login with valid credentials and a login with invalid credentials. To achieve this test, we have created a login page to follow the page object model, where we define an object for the page and we have all of the operations of that page defined in here. This will allow us to divide what is the aspect of the page from what we want to achieve. Meaning that I want to do the login. The login is achieved with these 3 steps at the moment. So at the test level, I'm just going to say, do a login on this page, and it will perform these 3 steps. If for any reason in the future, this will not be true. So if we need an extra step, if we need less of a step to do the login, the test itself will not change, so less maintenance. And what will change is this page object that we need to change and just add here the changes on the page. Coming back to the test, this means that we are loading the login page. We will navigate to it. We will log in with this login and password. We'll get the inner text and we'll validate that this is what we expect, the message expected after the operation. What changes from a normal test, Playwright test, is now we are able to add some specific annotations because we are using the Xray reporter that I just referenced before. This will allow you to add specific information to the JUnit file to enable you to enrich what you want to pass to Xray. And here we see that we are linking this test to this test in Xray. We are defining the test summary. We are linking to a specific requirement, the one that I just showed you, and we are defining a new test description. The second test, login with invalid credentials. We will do exactly the same, but with an invalid password. So what we will valid is that the message is now login failed, invalid username and password. The properties I'm adding, exactly the same. I'm just linking it to a different test to be categorized differently. And then in this particular test, I'm also adding a screenshot on the report. To configure the reporter, you have to go to the Playwright config in this area, and you will see that we are not using the default reporter, the HTML one, but we are using the Xray app Playwright JUnit reporter with this set of options that are also defined here on the same file. The Xray options will allow you to customize a little bit what you want to have on the test result file. And here I'm just saying that I'm going to embed the annotations as properties, and the text that will contain annotations will be the test description, and the embedded attachments will be a test run evidence. Another thing that is worthwhile mentioning on this configuration is this projects. So Playwright enable you to define projects that will allow you to run your tests targeting a specific browser. And you will see that on the command line that I'm going to use, I'm going to define which of the browser I'm going to use. If I don't refer any browser, it will execute the tests for each one of the browsers defined in these projects. Coming back to the test, what's missing is executing. To execute that, we can either use npm test that will execute this command. That is exactly what we use to execute the Playwright tests. This command just say that I'm going to produce a report called xray/report.xml. I'm going to execute npm Playwright tests, so executing all of the tests of Playwright I have here, but for project Chromium. By default, this will execute a Chrome browser in headless mode to execute the tests. So let's try it out on the terminal. I'm just going to put not num, but npm test. And this will start the tests. And as we see, 2 tests have passed. And on the report, we will see that we have all of the details for each one of the tests. We can see the extra properties being added. So we have the test key that we are going to link, the new summary, the requirement, and the test description. In the first test, we didn't have any test run evidence, but in the second one, the evidence is actually a screenshot that we are taking. All of this information will be ingested into Xray so that we can see those kinds of details directly in Jira. What's missing is importing this to Xray. To do so, I'm going to use a command to do the authentication. First of all, it's getting a valid token. To do so, I'm going to invoke the authentication endpoint of the API of Xray with a file, cloud authorization JSON, that I have pre-prepared. It's just a JSON file with either with the API key and the secret that I need to provide to the API in order for her to return a valid token for me to use on the next request. So performing the request, the API will answer back with the token that I have saved on this variable, and now I can just push the result into Xray. the results into Xray, I'm going to say that I'm going to push content type text XML, do a post request with a token, notarization token bearer using the token that I just extracted. The data that I'm going to push to Xray is the file generated, the Xray report.xml, and I'm going to push to the JUnit endpoint because this is a JUnit test result. And I'm going to say, well, the project is XT, and this is actually for test environment Chrome. Once I push this, this will push the Xray report to Xray, and Xray will validate if the tests already exist on the Xray side. If they exist, they will just link a new test execution to it. If they don't exist, they will create the test and link the test execution. Test execution is now XT764. So if I come back to the XT41 and reload, we will see that now we have a new execution with new results. So the test coverage has changed. Instead of the failing one, because we have re-executed the two tests, now it is passing. So the overall test, the overall result calculated is now okay. So this is good news for this requirement. Everything is okay. And if you want to check more details, we can jump to the tests that will have the test execution there, where we can see the details that we have pushed into Xray. So in the test execution, we see this 764, just double checking, 764. And if I jump into it, I can see a new object created on Xray that will hold the executions of the tests that are associated with this test execution. We have a successful login, an unsuccessful login. I'm going to open the unsuccessful login just to show you the evidence that we are pushing also. And in here, we can see that the successful login has not much details because when it's a success, we don't have log stack traces or anything, but we are pushing a screenshot. So if I press here, we can see the screenshot that we have taken for this test. And we have all of the details also defined. And as you can see, the test environment that I've passed as Chrome is also set. So now we have more information to filter out different types of tests that we may have here. This concludes the demonstration. We are going now to move forward to the performance tests. Let's move into performance testing. So the performance tests we have prepared are locus tests. As you know, performance tests are not deterministic. They cannot be evaluated with a passed or failed result. So we are approaching it with a KPI-based assessment. We measure success with 3 key performance indicators: requests per second, or RPS, to ensure load capacity, the 19th percentile response time to check the speed of the majority of the requests, and error rate to detect failure during execution. We have defined a listener that will convert those metrics into KPI results and create an Xray JSON result file that can be ingested by Xray. Finally, let's look at the code example. Here we define KPIs for specific endpoints like login, reservation, and purchase. Each has thresholds for response time, less than 5 milliseconds at the 90th percentile, RPS, which should exceed 500, and an error rate that must remain 0. If any of those thresholds are breached, errors are triggered in the pipeline. In summary, this approach seamlessly embeds performance testing into Xray, ensuring that we catch and address issues early for reliable deployments. Let's now jump to the locus demo. Before jumping into the code, let me just show you the test plan I have created in Xray to hold the tests regarding performance. Test plans are ways or objects that you can use in Xray that will allow you to plan your executions. And in this particular case, I'm going to gather all of the performance results under the same test plan where I can analyze the performance impacts on my application. In here, I just have created 3 tests that will hold the results of the KPI that I have defined in Locust. In the code, we have a Locust script that is a Python script. And with Locust, we actually define tasks that are what are the journeys we want to define, or what are the endpoints we want to exercise with the performance tests. And in here, I'm going to exercise the login endpoint, the reserve endpoint, and the purchase endpoint, and pass some values to those endpoints to do some actions. The actual Locust test, what we'll do is use the task that I've defined above, targeting this endpoint and adding a listener here that will serve the tests to define what are the KPIs I want for each one of the endpoints. In this case, those 3 KPIs, percentile, RPS, and error rate, with values for each one of the endpoints. This actually is meant to add this KPI listener as a new listener for Locust. And this listener is a class that I added that will calculate over all of the metrics that are gathered by Locust, that are usually a lot of files like we can see here. We have statistics, statistic history, failures and exceptions that have full of values of page loads, of time that it takes, of how many requests are done, and all of that are metrics that are gathered by Locust. But I want to convert that into 3 KPIs, and I want to link those 3 KPIs to 3 tests. So here are the keys. And in this class, where we will see that calculations are done to calculate the RPS and the fail rate regarding the metrics that are passing, I'm going to also, on the metrics check, each time a value or a threshold is not validated or is over the value that we are expecting, I'm going to add information to the Xray result JSON file. And this method will do exactly that. So each time something will fail on the log error, I'm going to do the same, append with a failed status. On if it's not failed, I'm going to add with a passed status. And in here you can customize as you want for your type of result and change things. But the important is I'm creating an Xray JSON result file in this file where I'm just saying how it is structured. It should be compliant with what Xray is expecting, and all of this definition of the format is present on documentation if you want to implement your own. So now what's missing is executing. On the execute the commands, what we will see is, well, you're going to use Locust. So Locust receives a file that is my Locust script Python. I'm saying that I'm going to run this in headless mode. I'm going to use 10 users, and I'm going to start with 1 user and increment 1 user each second for the amount of time of 1 minute. And all of the CSV files will have a prefix on the name called example. That's why we see example underscore and the rest of the file. Once I press enter, Locust will start. Let me just grow this a little bit. We'll start, and you will have output in the console for all of the tests that he is doing and all of the increments of the user that is doing. Actually, we can see here it will ramp 10 users at a rate of 1 per second. And we can see here the number of requests increasing as the number of users also increase. Now the Locust script has finished. We can see a resume of what was done here. We can see all of the files. Let me change this. all of the files with the statistics that he has recovered, the history of the statistics, all of the failures, and all of the exceptions that he has gathered. It has also generated the Xray results JSON file with all of the information of the test that has just been executed and the values for each one of the KPIs that I have defined. So now to import this into Xray, I'm going to use an API call to the endpoint. So I'm saying that the content type now is JSON because I'm going to pass the Xray results JSON, and I'm going to use the token that we have extracted before on the authorization, and I'm going to use the endpoint of Xray JSON. Once I press enter, the API will receive the Xray JSON file and will create a new execution with the results of these tests. The new execution is the XT763. So jumping back to the test plan and reloading the page, I will see now that the results are now here. We have, well, the overall status has not changed because the tests are having the same results, so they are consistent. But on the test execution, we will see that we have the 763. That is exactly the one that has been just created. And if I jump into the test execution, I will have all of the details for each test that was executed, as we can see here. And if I want to know the details, for example, of the error rate, this one that failed, I can, and I have all of the details that were added to the Xray JSON file with the errors for each one of the endpoints and why it has failed, and all of the CSV with metrics that were added to the file. Just to finalize, let me just tell you that the API does a lot more than just importing execution results. It allows you to do the authentication like I showed you, but also it will allow you to export Cucumber tests. And in here it has to do on how you want to work with the Cucumber workflow. We have more detail on that on the tutorials and the documentation, so please check that out. You can export the data sets that are defined in the manual tests. You can import execution results, and this is what I've just shown you with the Playwright and Locust imports. You can import tests. This is usually used when you are shifting from another test management platform, where you export the test from that platform and import it into Xray. Needs to a bit for a specific format, but fairly easy to do. You can also import Cucumber tests, and then you can work with backup and attachments. So this is in a nutshell. The Xray API will allow you to do a lot of other things in Xray. Then we will jump into GitHub Actions. I have just one demo that I'm going, I think almost the last one, that I'm going to go over. So remember that we have several plugins, more than just the API available plugins, or I don't know. In this is not a plugin, is an action that is available for GitHub. And actually it was a user, Mike Pence, that has worked on it initially, and we have contributed to it. And now we have an action that will allow, instead of calling those HTTP requests to the API, it has encapsulated on an action. This action will allow you to define the username and password. If you are using the cloud version, this will be the API token and secret. If it's the DCO server version, it's actually the username and password. It allows you to define if you're using Xray Cloud or not, what is the test format, and it supports all of the formats that Xray supports, so JUnit, XUnit, and all of those. What is the file that we will import? And if you want to associate it with a test plan and a project, you can also add it here. The only thing when you are using, and for the ones that have some experience on GitHub, make sure that this action is always called. Why? Because if the test fails, the pipeline will fail. And if it, by default, it fails at the step where it had failed, and then the results are not ingested into Xray. So it is important that you make sure that this action will always be executed, unless, of course, the tests are not executed. If the tests are not executed, we don't have the results to ingest. But if the tests have failed, you need to ingest those into Xray to have that visibility also. So let me show you what it looks like on GitHub. So on GitHub, we have several tutorials with code. This is the one I just talked about, Playwright, just to show how the actions are done. So as you can see, we have here all the information, and you have links to the tutorials on the documentation that will explain this to you. So for the ones that are not familiarized with GitHub, GitHub will allow you to have here a set of actions that you can define in order to do several things. One of those is compile, execute tests. I have defined this YAML file that is actually the file that will define everything that I have for the test execution in this site. I'm defining that I'm going to use Node.js. So this is well, I'm not defining, I'm saying that this is Node.js CI. I'm going to extract the branches associated to this action. I'm going to run on Ubuntu latest. I'm saying that I'm going to use 2 node versions, 14x and 15x. This is useful to keep track if the code continues to work on both of the versions. I'm going to check out the code. I'm going to execute then an npm install to install all of the dependencies. I'm going to use the same command to run the Playwright tests, and then here it is, the GitHub action that will import the results to Xray. As I said, I have created secrets here on GitHub to define the username and password. I'm saying that this will be to cloud. The base URL of the Jira instance is also defined on the secrets. I'm saying that I'm going to use a JUnit. The results generated is Xray report XML, and I'm passing the test plan and test project key also on the secrets to be associated to the right test plan and test project key. And I'm also adding the node version as an environment to Xray. So what this looks like, this usually should be triggered by a new commit or a change in the code, but as I'm not going to do that, I'm just force it to rerun, and I'm going to say yes, rerun all the jobs just for you to see. What this will do is actually take the definition that I have put there and just show me, and we can see what's happening in each one of those steps that we are defining. So installing everything that is needed to Playwright, then execute the test. As you can see, 2 tests using 1 worker. Login validations are being executed, and it should be fairly fast for us to have some feedback over it. But basically, this is useful when we have pipelines in GitHub or pipelines in other CI/CD tools to have automatically the results ingested into Xray. And as you can see, this is the import results to Xray. We have here information that we are passing, well, minus the secret that are hidden. Oh, and I'm glad that they are. And the feedback is, well, this was imported and the execution is 761. So if I go to Xray, and actually I can open it 7, what? just forgot. 761. I'm seeing 7 and writing 6. Okay, 761. This is because we are reaching the end of the demo. I'm not used to talk that much. So 761 is the test execution that was generated by GitHub Actions. As we can see, we have here the 2 tests, and we can see details of the execution. So the same way we're using the API on our local machine, we can use GitHub Actions, Jenkins plugins, or other plugins we have available, or all the API calls elsewhere. And it will do everything that we have just said. And we have also said, well, the test environment we are using is Node 15x. That is the one that we have defined on the GitHub Actions. So this was pretty much it regarding demonstrations. I hope it was helpful because sometimes we think on test management tools and we forgot what else can it bring to the table in terms of visibility and centralizing of information. That I think this is pretty much game changing on how we approach quality in our teams. But to close the loop, what's missing is reporting. Because now that we have all the information centralized in one place, reporting can be really, really valuable and game-changing also. So out of the box, Xray has several reports available to you. We have the overall coverage report that I'm going to show you in a little bit. That is this one that will allow you to analyze in terms of requirement coverage, how does your project looks like and what's going on that project. We have the traceability one, that is the second image that we have seen here, that will allow you to trace back and forth all of the activities that you have been doing. So you can trace from the epic to the user story to the test that is covering it, and understanding, well, the bug store 18 has actually been created in this test execution that is from this test that is covering this user story and impacting this epic. So you have this traceability visibility that allows you to know where are those problems coming from, or just doing an analysis on what is linked to what. You have also the ability to check the test plan list. This will give you all of the list of the test plans that have been used on your project and what is the status of those. It's really helpful also. And of course, all of these reports are also available as gadgets for you to create your own dashboards with several gadgets to customize the experience or customize the information that you want to show to different teams. So let me show you what it looks like. So Xray has all of these options here. In terms of reports, they are all centralized here. So let's jump to the test coverage one. And in here, you can generate a report for a specific project. You can define how you want to see. I'm going to focus on the priority, and I'm going to use the latest statuses. Then I press generate, and in here, immediately, I have a view of everything that's happening on my project. And I have divided this view into priorities. And for each one of this, it's really easy to understand what's happening. Just by looking at this, I will say, well, no, we have still failing tests for medium priority. We have even some requirements that have no tests defined to cover them. So what's happening here? We need to check this. And for the failing ones, I can jump directly to here and see what are the failed tests and do a further analysis over it. So this is a really powerful report that will give you a clean view over your project. The other one that I just talked about also is traceability. This will give you the same thing. So you choose the project, final status. I'm going to generate a report. This will give you a view of everything that's happening on your project. And this can be long. But let's say that I want to know only, or I want to see only the not okay statuses. So this will allow me to filter out the rest to do a better analysis of what's happening. Finally, the test plan metrics. We have a lot other reports here that you can explore on your own. But nevertheless, on the test plans, you can see all of the test plans. You have the tests gathered by status, where you can see how many you have of each. You can see how many test execution and jump directly to those, how many test runs, how many tests you have associated with this test plan, and you have test by test type. So this means that the 11 tests here are all generic. And in here, for instance, we see that this test plan has 4 manual tests. So all valuable information for you to manage quality on your projects. We just had a custom dashboard that I've created that just has the different reports here represented in different ways for me to provide information to my team. So in here we have the test execution list to have a notion of what is being executed. I can see how many tests we have per type. So we have 102 manual. Is this good? Is this bad? Should this be shrinking or not? So all of these questions are healthy questions to ask. We have the coverage going on, divided by components, so I can analyze through components what's going on. And all a series of different valuable information that is really, really helpful, not only to share what's happening on your project, but to share in ways that means really something for the persons that you are targeting this report into, because you can customize it with the correct dashboards. And you can combine Xray gadgets with Jira gadgets to have a better view of the project and not only of the quality. And that's it from my side. Back to you, Tony.
Thanks, Cristiano. By now, we've seen the impact that test automation can have in improving testing quality, speeding up delivery, and saving us resources. Automation should be used whenever tests are repeatable, repetitive, business critical, or determinate. Keep in mind that test automation is not easy and has multiple challenges. There's not one magic formula that solves automation for everyone, and trial and error is important to find the best combination for your specific use case. Having a tool that records and aggregates test automation results is truly the key for a successful implementation of test automation. And Xray helps you address these most common challenges posed by test automation. Here we have some additional resources that will help you get started with test automation in Xray. We'll send out a follow-up email, then it's going to include all of the links and these resources. So keep an eye out in your inbox in the upcoming days. We'll also be sending out a recording of this webinar in case you wanted to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. And now let's go right into our Q&A.
All right, so I'm seeing that we have quite a lot of questions. So should we jump right into it, Cristiano?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, so the first question we have here is by Evelise, and she is asking about integrations with Tricentis.
Well, like I said during the presentation, we have, Xray does not really care what is the automation tool that you use. I don't have experience with Tricentis, but the remain conclusions that I shared applied, meaning that if Tricentis can produce test result that is compatible with Xray, so you have to check if Tricentis can generate a JUnit or a XUnit or any of those types of results that Xray supports. If it produces that during the execution, you can just take that test results and push it through the API to Xray. So I think it's just a matter of checking it out.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Thanks for answering that question. Let's move on. So we have an anonymous question, and they've described here a scenario. So they say, we have developed a straightforward framework that utilizes BDD files with Cucumber, and it includes a basic test scenario. Their question is, would it be possible to integrate this with Jira and Xray to observe its behavior? And if so, how can we do that?
Yeah, so I just showcase automation with Playwright and Locust as examples, but in Xray you have different test types that you can create. You can create manual test types that will have
steps defined to it. You can create generic ones that are the ones that are holding all of the automation links. And you have the possibility to create Cucumber types of tests. And for those Cucumber types of tests, we actually have two ways of working with those. When we define what is the source of the truth regarding the definition of those Cucumber files. So in Xray, you can define the scenarios of the Cucumber in Gherkin language directly in Xray, and you can write those down. And then what you can do, if you want to have that definition done on Xray, you have to write all of that Gherkin definition of the scenario on Xray, and then Xray has APIs that you can export that to your automation tool. You create your code behind, and then you ship the test execution results that will be linked to this test in Xray, and you can see step by step the execution details on it. Or if you want to have all of the definition of the Gherkin in your automation tool, you can do so and define all of the Gherkin and the tests on your automation tool. Then you execute the tests, and you can synchronize first the Gherkin scenario so that you can visualize in Xray and create the test with that Gherkin scenario that you have on your test automation, and then push the results back into it. So you have these two ways of working with Cucumber in Xray side. And you can see the automation results in there also. But we have a lot of examples and tutorials where we have descriptions and samples of code, because all of the examples we have here that I presented are actually part of tutorials where you have an explanation step by step of how we have achieved to execute, to integrate with Xray for those tests. You have a GitHub code repo where you have the code available and the description on the documentation on the tutorial.
Perfect. Thanks for also sharing those resources, Cristiano. All right, let's move on to another question. We have one here by Adrian Santos, and he's asking if tests can be created on the fly in Jira and Xray. He means by simply executing the code, or do you always need to create the test manually before filling in the execution results?
Yeah, so good question. We actually have two ways of doing this. You can either choose to, because sometimes the teams are just going through the requirements and creating what we call placeholders for automation, and just saying, well, this will need an automated test to cover this requirement, or two or three. And then when you create the automation, you just link, like for example, in Playwright, you add that annotation and it will link to the test, and it will ship the execution results to that linked test. If you don't know beforehand what you will do, you can just create your automation without doing anything on Xray. And then when you ship the results back, you can either link them to a test plan or just ship them back to the project. And what will happen is Xray will try to find if any test is already defined for those test execution. If not, it will create a test on the Xray side and link that execution results. So you have both ways that you can work with it.
Perfect. Thanks for giving those options. So let's go on to another question now from Charles Lane. Charles is asking, can you create Gherkin scenarios in Xray, integrate with GitHub to push the feature files from Jira? And also, how do you get test execution results of these BDD tests?
Yeah, so it's a little bit aligned with the previous question about BDD and Gherkin. So it's exactly the same. You can, because the export of the feature files is an API call. So what it actually will do is you will request the Gherkin scenarios that you have defined on Xray to be exported into your automation tool. And you can do that on the pipeline if you have the code behind already done, of course, because nothing is magic. Well, until AI, at least. And then what we'll do is Xray will create a file that you can, a zip file with all of the feature files that you can export, and then you can unzip it and include it on your automation, and then execute the test on the pipeline. And then with the GitHub Action, for example, but we have a lot of other plugins available out there that you can integrate with different tools, CI/CD tools and automation tools. But in this case, for GitHub, you have a GitHub Action that I showed, and you can just ship the results back with it. So it's a way of working with that.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to another question by Abdurrahman. So he's asking if there's a document about this presentation to walk them step by step. It seems they're asking what they need for their automation scripts to add extra to their process.
Yeah. So depending on what you want to achieve, we have the documentation that documents everything that you have on Xray, of course. We have a section that we call tutorials, tips and tricks, where we have tutorials that describe specific use cases instead of just describing the functionality of Xray. It actually integrated it within what we call a close to real life workflow, meaning that we'll have for the playwrights, you have the code that I use, the locust code and the playwright code are part of two tutorials we have. One that are part of the performance that is locust, and we have other performance frameworks there that allows you to demonstrate how you can include those performance frameworks, executions, and Xray. So you have all of the test steps there. Some of those have videos that show you how to use it and this kind of examples. This is pretty new, so not all of the tutorials will have videos, unfortunately. But we have GitHub repo, where we have all of the code that you can download and execute directly, and you can follow the tutorials. So I believe that as a follow-up, first of all, we are not going to make to be able to answer all of the questions, but we will answer and do a follow-up on the questions that are here. And with that, I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, we will send some links also that they can access and use. Oh, the last thing is we also have an academy. So Xray is an academy where we have a set of courses that you can do. And in there, you have a more step-by-step approach for each one of the features that we have in Xray.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for bringing up the Academy, Cristiano. And we will be sending up a follow-up that also has a link to the Academy and the GitHub repo. So yeah, just keep an eye out on your inbox for that and you'll have it. All right, let's move on to another question. We have one here from Anonymous asking, can you update an existing test execution? A follow-up to that is, can it be updated if the script runs more tests than what exists in the test execution?
Yeah, so good question. Actually, you can, so if you don't define anything, the default behavior will be each time it executes, it will create a new test execution. Because on the other way, on the Xray way of looking at things, it's another execution that can be associated to a different environment, to a different version. But we give also the possibility, or because Xray is somehow customizable, because we know teams work in different ways. So one of the things we didn't want to impose is the way for each one of the teams to work. So we need Xray to be adaptable to the ways of each team to work. And one of the things is the default behavior will be create new test executions that will hold that test execution result. But if you want to just reuse the test execution, because I don't know, it's a rerun, it's just to validate something, or it's just the way your team works, you can, on the API, when you are ingesting the results back, define what is the test execution that you want to update. So this answers the first part of the question. The second part is, if you are adding more tests to the same test execution, it will update the tests present on the test execution, meaning that if you have 3 tests at the first time you execute with a set of results, and then you execute a second time, but now you have 5 tests, it will automatically add the other 2 tests to the test execution and have the results calculated over it.
All right. Cristiano, do we have time for one more question or?
Yeah.
I
if it's
think
not too
we went
complicated.
right on the clock, actually. So yeah, I think that's all the time we're gonna have. But these are
Okay.
great questions, and thanks for
Yeah.
doing that follow-up. To everyone who attended, thank you so much for tuning in today for this webinar around test automation. We hope you found the content valuable. Like we mentioned previously, we will be sharing a recording of this in an email follow-up, and we'll also be sending the links that we shared in the presentation to the Xray Academy, the GitHub repo, and several other links that we shared in the presentation. So stay tuned for that in your inbox. And thank you again so much for joining us, and we'll see you in one of our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.